Welcome, Andrew, to Metallarian Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Baring Teeth on this new album, The Path Narrows, and more things related to the metal world. So we're starting, I think, with a common question. So why the band delayed almost nine years to release an album?
Well, so we released the last album in
2018.
2018. Yeah. So we had
Oh, no,
started
5 years.
writing
Sorry.
5 years. Yeah, yeah. We had started writing in 2019 for the next record. And I think we had one song completely finished, and then I think parts of some other ones, and then, obviously COVID hit. So at that time, we kept working remotely. Obviously, that takes a little bit longer. And then, so we wrote the entire record by just hatching, bouncing ideas back and forth remotely. And then we got back together and we started meeting in person in late 2020, maybe 2021. And then at that time, we really refined everything, got everything tight so that we could record it effectively and, efficiently. So it obviously took a little bit of time. And this record also is a lot more layered, I guess, or maybe more cinematic. So there was a lot more, we allowed ourselves more time to add some of those flourishes and really flesh everything out to make a, cohesive front to back record, as opposed to just like a selection of songs.
Okay. Well, I'm a huge fan from Baring Teeth because
Oh, thanks.
I know the band when you released your first album, at Trophy. So more 12 years ago now. So
Yeah.
how do you see, or how do you see, how do you see the road of Baring Teeth since the beginning to now?
Yeah, it's interesting because that first record, I mean, we hadn't been a band too terribly long by the time we recorded it. I think we recorded it in 2010. We might have even started recording it late 2009. It was kind of a long process. So very, we were still kind of finding our footing. And then over time, I feel like we've kind of carved out our own niche and really, we've stretched ourselves while still staying within that kind of, I think whatever we do still sounds like us. So that's something we hang our hat on, is we're still able to push ourselves, whether it's technically or as songwriters or, especially rhythmically lately. I feel like we've really been experimenting there. So yeah, really, obviously it takes a little bit of time for us to release material, but um, it's worth it because in the end, especially with this record, we're really happy with how it came out. And, it's crazy to think, yeah, we've been a band 15 years, which is, 4 records now, which is wild because we didn't really, we didn't have any sort of grand ambitions or anything when we started. It was just, we just wanted to jam together and, see what happens. So.
Okay. Well, I remember when the Baring Teeth appears on the world with this aspect, with the technical, progressive, dissonant. Well, at that time, I remember that in 2010, this style was saturated. Was saturated because a lot of bands appear with these aspects, especially Willow Tube Records released
Oh yeah.
a ton of albums with with influence from Gargoyles. Now we have, I think we are living in a second wave of this dissonant, technical, progressive stuff around the world. So, what's your point of view since you are one of the first bands that doing this kind of music more than 10 years ago, and now there's more bands that are trying to say that ulcerate and forget the past, obviously, with this aspect. So,
Yeah.
what's your point of view about the new bands into the dissonant, technical, progress? I don't know why.
Yeah. No, it's great because, I would, put Imperial Triumphant, for example, in that category. And it's really cool to see how, it seems like people's palettes have expanded to where some of these really weird boundary pushing bands and, songs are really being accepted at a larger scale, which is really, really cool. And I feel like, even though the bands that fit within that, dissonant death metal umbrella, there's a lot of variety within that categorization. So like, you know, a band like Ulcerate and a band like Piron, to me, don't they share common characteristics, but to me they don't really sound that much alike. So it's cool that a you know a genre, if you want to call it that, can be so open to interpretation, but maintaining that cohesive thread, or I guess the experimentation is um, the big difference, or the big commonality between all those bands.
Right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned one thing about this, well, this new sub style, I think. Well, as a website, we don't think about the technique. Well, we don't think the dissonant death metal exists because for us, the death metal or the dissonant is a technique into the death metal, into the technical.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know why the people is still calling like new movement dissonant death metal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Really, I don't
Yeah.
know. So
It's
what's
funny because I think about it in like, all death metal is dissonant,
yeah.
power metal is melodic, stuff like that, to where it's kind of like I get what it means and I get why people use it, but at the same time it's also kind of funny because like, early Cannibal Corpse is super dissonant too. So it's
Yes,
like,
yes,
but
yes.
anyway, when you say dissonant death metal, or when somebody says it, I mean, you get the idea of what they're talking about. But yeah, I agree.
Oh, okay. Okay, now the music and now the music, well, now the path we have this new path narrows on your career, the full album of the band. So
Mhm.
for me, when I did the review, so I didn't know that you return to the past and drink obviously from your own influence, like a trophy it is. So I like this abstract, dissonant, technical aspect that the variant has. One had since the beginning to now, but obviously the people wants to say what's your opinion about commonly compare with this path, the path narrows compared to the previous one, the transitive savagery?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot more space in this record compared to the last one, because even thinking about how the album starts, Trains of Savagery is just like immediate, like first second, it's just like, a gunshot, like balls to the wall. Whereas this one, there's a longer intro, there's a lot more, I don't know if you want to call it ambient uh influences and seeds and things like that. So I think that's one of the big differences, is there's a lot more breadth and space in this one. Like um, even with the last song on the record, which I don't know if it's longer than the last song on Atrophy, but it's really close. I mean, really really long song with a lot of different motifs and like changes within it. So I think the reason for that too is because like during COVID, when pretty much the entire record was written, other than that one song that we had finished beforehand, it was people seemed to react in one of two ways to that environment creatively. It's like either they got really inspired and they were able to work a lot, or they weren't inspired at all and they weren't able to do anything. I was lucky in that I found it creatively liberating, at least at the beginning. After a while, it kind of went away. But from March, I guess, of 2020 until I want to say September, like I wrote all the like multiple hours a day, every day, on weekends, maybe 5 or 6 hours. And during that entire time, like that 5 6 month period, the arrangement for pretty much the entire album were written in demoed, which is pretty crazy considering how what my workflow is normally. Because like normally I would write a song every couple months, but I was writing some of the songs I wrote, maybe two a month or two or three a month. So it was pretty wild. And I realized it was because I didn't have any sort of pressure. Because even now, being able to go around freely again, when I'm writing, I'm like, okay, I have to block out, like 2 hours on a Saturday in between this and this. But for that, for the new record, I didn't have to worry about that at all. So I could just, spend as much time as I wanted to. That's kind of where the synth influence came into, was just because I was like, I don't even remember what song it was, but there was a song where I had an idea and I wrote something, and then it kind of influenced some of the other parts on the record too, where we added them in. So um, yeah, and again, I feel really lucky that I was able to be creative in that environment, because it just as easily could have gone the other way. So yeah, thankfully it was kind of like lightning in a bottle, where I wrote it all really quickly, and then like I kind of burnt myself out. And I wrote some other for other projects too, but I kind of burned myself out after that 6 or 7 months.
Okay, okay. I remember when a trophy appears in the world, with especially for the cover art, because you present a goat with two heads in the cover art. Then, since your
Yeah,
second album, in your third album, you decide to do in the cover art things like geometric stuff. So like geometric
yeah,
figures into there, more simple stuff, I think. So, but with this new album and the Path Narrow, especially, I love the cover art, by the way. You try to do something like Eater, something like the first album, like the two people has separate ways, like bonded by blood, something like that. So,
yeah.
something by blood, but in something astral way. So what can you tell about this the Path Narrows cover art?
That's that's funny that you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about that before, where the first record and this one have, you know, actual living beings on them, but the other two don't. Derek Setzer did the art, and we've been a fan of his for a long time, and we know people who've worked with him. So I don't remember how we landed on that, truthfully. It was I think it was a gut feeling of like, this is the right thing for the themes and feel of the record, because it does, at least to me, through the use of synths and the space that we allow the songs to have, it kind of has a very ethereal, like, um cosmic kind of feel to it, at least when I listen to it. So it fits in that sense. And then the I guess the duality, that's really funny, because I definitely hadn't thought about that in the relation to apathy with the two. I actually have, I don't know if you can see it, but I have that
Okay.
tattoo. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So I mean, it was basically just like it felt right. And when we saw it, we were like, oh man, that's the perfect art for this record. But um yeah, again, that's crazy. I'd never thought about that. That's funny.
Okay. Okay. Now, as one now, talking about from the plans for this new album, what kind of plans do you have to promote this album? Perhaps you will do videos, you will embark in tours in US, obviously, or perhaps in Europe, or who knows, you're on a few steps here in Latin America.
Yeah, no, we definitely plan to do a run in the US. We've been talking, so we've been to the East Coast a few times. We need to go to the West Coast, so we're planning on doing that early next year. Um, Touring beyond that, like, I mean, we would definitely be open to really anything. It kind of just depends on what opportunities come our way. So hopefully, yeah, we can make it to Europe or Latin America, stuff like that. That's one thing where in the past, we've gotten opportunities, things have come our way that we've always been like, yeah, we want to do this. And for whatever reason, it's fallen through. So hopefully for this go around, it'll actually come to fruition and work out. Promotionally, we've been, for the past records, we were more, I guess, what's what I'm longer form promotional videos. So like playthrough videos and videos of us rehearsing and stuff like that. For this one, I think we're going to do something similar, except in a shorter form. So like I've been posting videos to, Instagram and Facebook of snippets of playthroughs, like me playing through stuff, Jason playing in the studio, things like that. It's a lot more manageable. And I think too, just given people's nature, especially now, like shorter attention spans and stuff, having a 45-second, minute long type of playthrough is much more appealing, both for people who are watching and then also for us making it. Um, that's really the only. I'm sure we'll do some other stuff. That's the only thing that we have planned, though, from a I guess a promotional material type of perspective.
Great. Oh, okay, okay. Now talking about now, especially for the labels of the band. Well, the first two albums were released by Willow Tree Records, so we kept
Hmm.
on doing it that bold releases. Then you Transitive Savage released by Translation Raw Lost Records.
Hmm.
Now you are entered with Luciano, the
Hmm.
Ivan Hanger Records. So how was the transition to change the label for the Wheel of Teeth, then translation, and now I think one of the big promise of the underground is Ivan Hanger Records because all music is very interesting to hear.
Yeah, and I've been a fan of I Void Hanger for a really long time, so super excited to be working with them. The label relationships we've had have just serendipitous, I guess you could say. So like with Willow Tip, for example, we had a friend, um, Kill the Client. I don't know if you know them. They were on Willow Tip back in the day. We're really good friends with them. They're from Dallas, but their bass player mentioned us to Tipton, and he heard. I think we had a pre-production thing online, and he basically just contacted us and said, "I want to work with you guys. Do you have anything else?" And I think by that point we might have already completed recording the record, so we basically just sent it to him, and he was like, "Yeah, let's put it out." And so we did two with him, and then Drew from Translation Lost we had known for a while. Um, he We decided to work with him, just kind of a change of pace. Being on Willow Tip, like I've I'd wanted to release stuff on Willow Tip since I was like 15. Like I'm a huge fan. But moving to Translation Lost was exciting. We really enjoyed, especially from a production, uh, vinyl manufacturing, like design standpoint. It was really cool because Drew's so passionate about how that the final product is, like the tangible physical product. And then with I Void Hanger, um, he had I don't remember the exact. I think he had heard that we were recording, and he reached out, and so we sent him the record when it was done. Um, the idea of, like you mentioned, I Void Hanger has such a, I guess, cachet of like experimental black
Yeah,
metal, like
yeah,
really weird shit.
weird stuff.
Yeah, which we obviously fit into that nicely, and also the fact that it European based was interesting too. Um, because from a distribution standpoint, especially the last one, we would get, questions about availability in Europe, and it would be available, but it was kind of sometimes it was hard to track down. So the idea of working with him, being in Italy, was an appeal to. So yeah, it was basically just kind of, again, going back to gut feeling. It just felt like the right time to work with him, and yeah, it's been great. And similar to Drew, he has such an eye for design and in the manufacturing aspect of everything that it's um, you know it's good to be able to just be like, leave it in his hands. He obviously has control over this, and we can focus on other stuff, because yeah, that the manufacturing aspect of it can be stressful, because we self re-released Atrophy on vinyl way back in the day, and that was a huge pain in the ass. So glad to not ever deal with that again.
Okay, well, no, I'm talking about other kind of aspects, as I mentioned in the previous question. And well, as you can see now, the world we are living in a world in different ways because all these years of experience as a professional musician, you have to learn how to live from your art, and I think it's getting difficult some ways since bands don't sell many records as the 80s, for example, no. And now go on tour for a lot of people say that is getting more expensive for these bus, flight tickets, venues, etc. No? But on the other side, the technology has brought some advantage. Of course, nothing is perfect, but you can take music all over the world through digital platforms and social networks. All you will allow you to be in contact with your fans. Also, there are alternatives like crowdfunding, etc., that are for the musician, Patreon, this kind of aspect for a lot for musicians. Etc. So now with these aspects, so how difficult it's from your perspective to be a musician nowadays?
There's definitely not money in it. We,
Yeah.
we all of us have full-time jobs. We're lucky enough to, you know, make a profit. We're not losing money being in a band, but at the same time, because we have full-time jobs, we're lucky enough to be able to just reallocate that money, invest it back into the band, and like when the touring that we've done, it's, we had our own van. We really, the only money that we spent was just like getting a hotel room or something like that. So it's definitely, you know, part of me wishes that it was 20 years ago when bands could actually make money. But then at the same time, it's like, well, would we even have the opportunities we have now in a pre-internet age? So double-edged sword. I feel lucky and gratified in that I'm in a band or like a musician who plays with people I respect and are friends with, and then on top of that, lucky enough to have people who care about what we do. Because like, especially with this record, it was kind of like being in a cave because we were working on all this stuff. We didn't really post anything to social media because there wasn't like really anything to say. And so once we were able to announce everything and like release songs, it's really cool to just, because it I've heard these songs so many times now, and it's cool to see other people's reactions to hearing them for the first time, especially now that the album's about to come out. I think it's next Friday. But yeah, again, like it would be awesome to be able to make money. At the same time, I enjoy being extremely passionate about it and being able to um, be as free as we want to be creatively. Because that would be another thing if like we were dependent on the band to make money. Inevitably, I think that would influence our creative decisions, which I wouldn't want.
Hmm. Okay. Well, last year I remember that I spoke with Devin Townsend, and he told me that his music is very weird, very strange for
Yeah.
to be popular. But now that everything is very personalized and there are
Mhm.
more strange, as I mentioned a lot of times, it's more strange, technical, progressive, experimental, avant-garde. I don't know. A lot of mixture happen now in the extreme music, especially
Yeah.
and
Yes,
with
definitely
many
true.
bands in the planet, it's normally. So what do you think will happen to the next generations when listening to the music that is very personal? Would we take in about close work for a new bands because there will no be longer a song on the radio because they prefer to listen more personalized artists and not just a common things.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I, being the age, I am and the other guys in the band are, you have to make an effort to find new music or find new bands. Um, and I'm always not surprised, but just sometimes it just dawns on me that, man, there's so many new young bands that are really, really good. So I think going forward, I mean, to me, it almost is the opposite of what I would expect, where, like you said, things get so niche, so personalized. You can find, anything that's almost specifically tailored to what you want to hear. But at the same time, I think people take those super niche influences and mash them together and then create something that's really, really wild. And yeah, it's like there's this project called Eros Rot. It's this guy from, I think he's from Austin. He's some kid from like the Berkeley College of Music or something. But anyway, it's like brutal death metal, kind of like Defeated Sanity-ish. But he's like 19, and it's just like it's really, even by those standards, it's really fucking weird. And you can tell that he took all these, like slam and jazz and like all these very, avant-garde influences and was able to create something that, I don't think it really sounds like anybody else. So using that as an example of, um, I think it'll create some exciting creative output simply because you're taking influences that are hyper specific and using them to meld something new.
Hmm. Well, yeah. Well, and the other part of the technology is that we are years that we are no more, that we are no more banned to fill stadiums and everything is personalized by, as I mentioned, by
Yeah.
tastes and colors. And now, thanks to the TikTok or Facebook or Instagram trends, there are really sometimes silly or overall very annoying trends that exist in these social medias. So, where do you
Yeah.
think art enters in this generation that already consumes little or nothing physical material and only takes music as a background of their daily lives? I'm daily lives. I mentioned go to the gym, wash the car, go to the bath,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
Yeah. Um, it's tough because like I mentioned, with there's a lot of younger bands that are really, really great because the internet, obviously you're exposed to so much, and there's so many bands out there now and so many projects. Like, you, whether you want to or not, I stumble across bands or artists where it's very, very obvious that the creative output takes a very much a backseat to like the aesthetic social media influencer type stuff. Like, there was I don't I don't remember the name of the band, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't say it just to not out them. It's nothing like I would listen to, but I came across this video of this guy, and they were big band, like they were playing, they were underground, but they were still like 3 or 4 thousand people, and he did this whole, it was like a choreographed routine where he was like swinging his bass around and like doing these spins and all this stuff, and it was funny because what he was actually playing on the bass. I mean, he essentially was playing nothing, but what he did play was he would play like one open note every now and then it's like, how many people have seen or heard of this band because of this ridiculous choreographed spinning live video? Like, it was just so stupid. But anyway, things like that where it's depressing to think that that dumb video probably got more exposure than anything I'll ever do, I'll ever do, or like spend time working on. Which, it is what it is. But yeah, there's definitely a feeling sometimes of the artistic output has become very surface level in certain instances. There definitely are still a ton of bands, obviously, that are doing deep, creative, like meaningful, creatively fulfilling work. And that'll always be the case, which is great. But yeah, there's definitely a lot, especially on social media, where it's just like, this is really stupid. This has no, this, I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't have any value, because I don't think anything creatively has no value. But at the same time, it's like, this is definitely not for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, we are very close to this interview, Andrew. And for this aspect, I sometimes I remember when I grow up into the metal community, because I bought magazines from Metal Hammer, Heavy
Mhm.
Rock from Spain, etc., and a lot of things magazines. And when you read the news at that times, you read Stratovarius are releasing new album, new single, etc., etc., or I don't know, Mustaine saying that this album is much better than the previous one, etc. This kind
Yeah.
of news is encourage you to know about the band, to know. But now, thanks to the social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. Now the press in general around the world has not a lot of morbid into the news. There are public lives of the artists, embarrassing things of the artists.
Yeah.
Some media are trying to annoying things with the past, with the Mustaine, with the Metallica all the time. I read news
Yeah.
with the Metallica like 10, 30 news per day about the same
Yeah.
thing. So, what is your opinion about now the press in general? Do you think that the now is more morbidity like and not compared with the 80s or 90s?
Yeah. I mean, going like it kind of ties back to the whole niche thing where the outlets that are still here are either super general, like, Blabbermouth or something, where it's, I think they post stuff about Foo Fighters and, really big band like Pantera, obviously. Or you go to the really niche stuff. And I think there are still some outlets that do post some like meaningful, interesting, interviews. Like I think Bardo Methodology, I think is what it's called. Um, it's mostly like black metal, but they have super long, extensive interviews and very, you know, insightful output. But you definitely, going back to like Blabbermouth, that there's so much like clickbaity, just pointless stuff on the like you talked about with Mustaine and Metallica with yeah, it's just like I've seen this a million times. But something else to that too is you have younger kids who are coming into the fold or like first getting exposed to metal and they don't know anything about some of the constant like topics that bubble to the surface, or they don't know who these bands are. So something that is clickbaity is going to capture their attention. So um it's definitely, I don't look at many of those anymore just because like you said, most of it is repetitive and very boring and not super interesting to read. But there's still, like Bardo Methodology, I'll check in on that pretty often just because they'll have cool interviews with people or bands that don't typically get a lot of exposure, or they don't do a ton of interviews, that type of thing. But yeah, when I was coming up, it was at the very tail end of the print, you know, magazines, print media related to metal, and very quickly it all kind of went away. So Decibel, I guess, is really the only one I can think of that still exists in, print form. There might be others, but that's the only one I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, Andrew, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this interview like me. Terrific guy. Love your band since Atrophy. I mentioned it
Thanks.
2 times. So I got my CDs here. So I'm waiting for the pre-order for the new one. So perhaps
Awesome.
do you want add something to your Latin American fans and Metalerium followers?
No, thanks. Yeah, really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, thanks for the interview and the review. I thought that was really you put a lot of thought into it, which is always great and rewarding to see. And I mean, yeah, hopefully we'll play there sometime soon. That would be really cool. Um, but yeah, beyond that, I hope people like the record. I think there'll be an early stream going up like the middle of next week, so people will be able to hear it a few days before it's actually out. And yeah, hopefully people like it.